Chapter number 6 is citizenship. Citizenship implies full and equal membership of a political community. In this chapter, we will explore what exactly this means today in section this and this. So we will be looking at some debates and struggles which are going on regarding the interpretations of the term full and equal membership. Now we will be discussing about the relationship between the citizens and the nation and the criteria of citizens adopted in different countries. The theories of democratic citizenship claims that citizenship should be universal. Does this mean that every person today should be accepted as a member of one or other state? Then how can we explain the existence of so many stateless people? And this issue will be discussed in section this, and the last section will be discussing the issues of global citizenship, and does it exist, and could it replace national citizenship? After going through this chapter, you should be able to explain the meaning of citizenship and discuss some of the areas in which that meaning is being expanded or challenged today. And now let's discuss about the introduction. So citizenship has been defined as full and equal membership of a political community. In the contemporary world, states provide a collective political identity to their members as well as certain rights. Therefore, we think of ourselves as Indians or Japanese or Germans. Depending on the state to which we belong, citizens expect certain rights from their state as well as help and protection wherever they may travel. And the importance of full membership of a state can be appreciated if we think of the condition of the thousands of people in the world who have the bad fortune to be forced to live as refugee or illegal migrants because no state is willing to grant them membership. Such people are not guaranteed rights by any state and generally live in precarious conditions. For them, full membership of a state of their choice is a goal for which they are willing to struggle, as we see today with the Palestinian refugees in the Middle East. And the precise nature of the rights granted to the citizens may vary from the state to state, but in most democratic countries today, they would include some political rights like the right to vote, civil rights like the freedom of speech or belief, and some socio-economic rights, which could include the right to a minimum wage or the right to education. Equality of rights and status is one of the basic rights of the citizenship. Now next is each of the rights now enjoyed by the citizens has been won after struggle, and some of the earliest struggles were fought by the people to assert their independence and rights against powerful monarchies. Many European countries experienced such struggles, some of them violent, like the French Revolution in 1789 in the colonies of Asia and Africa. Demands for the equal citizenship formed part of their struggle for the independence from the colonial rulers. In the South Africa, the black African population had to undertake a long struggle against the ruling white minority for the equal citizenship. This continued until the early 1990s. Struggle to achieve for the full membership and equal rights continue even now in many parts of the world, and you may have read about the women's movement and the Dalit movement in our country. And their purpose is to change public opinion by drawing attention to their needs as well as to influence government policy to ensure them equal rights and opportunities. Let's think, during the 17th to 20th centuries, while white people of Europe established their rule over the black people in the South Africa, read the following descriptions about the policy practices in the South Africa till 1994. And the whites had the right to vote, contest elections and elect government. They were free to purchase property and go to any place in the country. Blacks did not have such rights. Separate colonies for the whites and blacks were established, and the blacks have to take passes to work in the white neighborhoods, and they were not allowed to keep their families in the white areas, and the schools were also separate for the people of different color. And do you think the blacks had full and equal membership in the South Africa? Give reasons. What does the above description tell us about the relationship of the different groups in the South Africa? उसके बाद जो नेक्स्ट वो क्या है, थिंक ऑफ सम ऑफ द एग्जांपल्स ऑफ एक्टिविटीज ऑफ द सिटीजन्स इन योर एरिया इंटेंडेड टू हेल्प अदर्स और इम्प्रूव द एरिया और प्रोटेक्ट द एनवायरमेंट. लिस्ट सम ऑफ द एक्टिविटीज विच कुड बी अंडरटेकन बाय यंग पीपल ऑफ योर एज ग्रुप. उसके बाद हाउएवर सिटीजनशिप इज अबाउट मोर देन द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन द स्टेट्स एंड देयर मेंबर्स. इट इज ऑल्सो अबाउट द सिटीजन रिलेशंस and involves certain obligations of the citizens to each other and to the society. And this would include not just the legal obligations imposed by the states, but also a moral obligations to participate in and contribute to the shared life of the community. Citizens are also considered to be the inheritors and trustees of the culture and natural resources of the country. A good way to understand the political concept is to look for the instances where its accepted meaning is being questioned by the groups who feel that it does not account of their needs and aspirations. Now let's discuss about the full and equal membership here. If you have ever traveled in a crowded railway compartment or bus, you will be familiar with the way in which those who may have earlier fought each other to enter, once inside, discover a shared interest in keeping others out. Division soon develops between insiders and outsiders, with outsiders being seen as a threat, and similar processes take place from time to time in the cities, regions, or even in the nation as a whole. If jobs, facilities like medical care or education and natural resources like land or water are limited, demands may be made to restrict entry to outsiders, even though they may be fellow citizens. You may remember the slogan "Mumbai for Mumbaikars," which expressed such feelings. And many similar struggles have taken place in the different parts of the India and the world. And this raises questions about what full and equal membership really means. Does it mean that citizens should enjoy equal rights and opportunities wherever in the country they may decide to live, study, or work? Does it mean that all citizens, rich or poor, should enjoy the certain basic rights and facilities? In this section, we will explore the meaning of the citizenship by focusing on the first of these questions. One of the rights guaranteed to citizens in our country and in many others is freedom of movement. This right is of particular importance for the workers. Labor tends to migrate in search of jobs when opportunities are not available near their homes, and some people may even travel outside the country in search of jobs. Markets for the skilled and unskilled workers have developed in the different parts of our country. For instance, IT workers may flock to town like Bangalore. Nurses from the Kerala may be found all over the country, and the booming building industry in towns attracts workers from different parts of the world. Now here, Martin Luther King. The 1950s witnessed the emergence of civil rights movements against the inequalities that existed between the black and white population in many of the southern states of the USA. Such inequalities were maintained in these states by a set of laws called segregation laws, through which the black people were denied many civil and political rights. These laws created separate areas for the colored and white people in the various civic amenities like railways, buses, theaters, housing, hotels, restaurants, etc. Martin Luther King was a black leader of the movement against these laws, and King gave many arguments against the prevailing laws of the segregation. First, in terms of the self-worth and dignity, every human person in the world is equal regardless of one's race or color. And second, King argued that segregation is like social leprosy on the body politics, because it inflicts deep psychological wounds on the people who suffer as a result of such laws. King argued that the practice of segregation diminishes the quality of life for the white community also. He illustrated this point by the examples. The white community, instead of allowing the black people to enter some community paths as was directed by the court, decided to close them. Similarly, some baseball teams had to be disbanded as the authorities did not want to accept black players. And thirdly, the segregation laws created artificial boundaries between people and prevent them from cooperating with each other for the overall benefits of the country. For these reasons, King argued that these laws should be abolished, and he gave a call for peaceful and non-violent resistance against further segregation laws. He said in one of his speeches, "We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into the physical violence." And physical violence. Here we are discussing the booming building industry. The booming building industry in town attracts workers from the different parts of the country. So do infrastructure projects like roads making, and you may have come across workers from the different regions near your home or school. However, often resistance builds up among the local people against so many jobs going to people from the outside the area. Sometimes at lower wages, a demand may develop a restrict certain jobs to those who belong to the state or those who know the local language. Political parties may take up the issues. Resistance could even take the form of the organized violence against the outsiders. Almost every region of India has experienced such moments. Are such moments ever justified? We all become the indignant if Indian workers in other countries are ill-treated by the local population. Some of us may also feel that skilled and educated workers have the right to migrate for the works. States may even be proud of their ability to attract such workers, but if jobs are scarce in a region, local residents may resent competition from the outsiders. Does the right to freedom of movement include the right to live or work in any part of the country? Another factor that we need to consider is that there may sometimes be a difference between our response to poor migrants and to skilled migrants. We may not always be as welcoming to poor migrants who move into our areas as we may be to skilled and affluent workers, and this raises the questions of whether poor and unskilled workers should have the same right to live and work anywhere in the country as do skilled workers. And these are some of the issues which are being debated in our country today regarding full and equal membership for all the citizens of the country. However, disputes may sometimes arise even in democratic societies. How can such disputes be resolved? And the rights to protest is an aspect of the freedom of expression guaranteed to the citizens in our constitution, provided protests does not harm the life or property of other peoples or the states. Citizens are free to try and influence public opinion and government policy by forming groups, holding demonstrations, using the media, appealing to the political parties, or by approaching the courts, and the court may give a decision on the matter, or they may urge the government to address the issues. It may be a slow process, but varying degrees of success are sometimes possible if the guiding principle of providing full and equal membership to all the citizens is kept in mind. It should be possible to arrive at an acceptable solution to the problems that may arise from time to time in a society. A basic principle of democracy is that such disputes should be settled by the negotiations and discussions rather than force, and this is one of the obligations of the citizenship. Now here, examine the arguments for and against freedom of movements and occupations throughout the country for the citizens. Should the long-term inhabitants of a region enjoy preferences for the jobs and facilities, or should states be allowed to fix quotas for the admissions to professional colleagues for the students who do not belong to the state? Equal rights. In this section, we will examine another aspects of citizenship, that is the issue of whether full and equal membership means that all citizens, rich or poor, should be guaranteed certain basic rights and a minimum standard of living by the state. To discuss this issue, we will look at one set of people, that is the urban poor. Dealing with the problem of the poor in the towns is one of the urgent problems facing the government today. There is a large population of the slum dwellers and squatters in the every city in India. Although they may do necessary and useful work, often at low wages, they are often viewed as unwelcome visitors by the rest of the town population. They may be blamed for the straining the resources of the city or for the spreading crime and disease, and the conditions in the slums are often shocking. Many people may be crammed into small rooms, into no private toilets, running water or sanitation. Life and property are insecure in a slum. However, slums dwellers make a significant contribution to the economy through their labor, and they may be hawkers, petty traders, scavengers, or domestic workers, plumbers, or mechanics, among the other professions. Small businesses such as cane weaving or textile printing or tailoring may also develop in the slums, and the city probably spends relatively little or providing slum dwellers with the services such as sanitation or water supply. Here you can see citizenship, equality, and rights. So citizenship is not merely a legal concept, it is also closely related to the larger notion of equality and rights. A widely accepted formulation of this relationship was provided by the British sociologist T.H. Marshall 1893 to 1981 in his book Citizenship and Social Class 1950. Marshall defined citizenship as a status bestowed on those who are full members of a community, all who possess the नहीं यहीं पे ले आओ, ग्लास है उधर ही दीदी, ग्लास वहीं से ले लेना, वो जो के ऊपर है जी, ठीक है, थैंक यू दीदी. Citizenship, equality, and rights. Citizenship is not merely a legal concept, it is also So citizenship, equality, and rights. Citizenship is not merely a legal concept, it is also closely related to the larger notions of the equality and rights. A widely accepted formulation of this relationship was provided by the British sociologist T.H. Marshall 1893 to 1981 in his book Citizenship and Social Class 1950. Marshall defined citizenship as a status bestowed on those who are full members of a community. All who possess the status are equal with respect to the rights and duties with which the status is endowed. The key concept is in Marshall idea of citizenship is that of equality. This implies the two things: first, that quality of the given rights and duties duties improves. The second, that the quantity of people upon whom they are bestowed grows. Marshall says citizenship as involving three kinds of rights: civil, political, and social. Civil rights protect the individual's life, liberty, and property. Political rights enables the individuals to participate in the process of governance. Thank you, Didi. So the key concept in the Marshall idea of citizenship is that of equality. This implies two things. First, that quality of the given rights and duties improves. Second, that the quantity of the people upon whom they are bestowed grows. And Marshall sees citizenship as involving three kinds of rights: civil, political, and social. And civil rights protect the individual's life, liberty, and property. And political rights enables the individuals to participate in the process of governance. Social rights gives the individual access to education and employment. Together, they make it possible for the citizens to lead a life of dignity. Marshall shows social class as a system of inequality. Citizenship ensures equality by countering the divisive effects of the class hierarchy. It thus facilitates the creation of a better, integrated, and harmonious community. ठीक है? So, awareness about the condition of the urban poor is growing among the government, NGO, and other agencies, and among the slum dwellers themselves. For instance, the national policy on the urban street vendors was framed in January 2004, and there are lakhs of street vendors in the big cities, and they often face harassment from the police and town authorities. And the policy was intended to provide recognition and regulation for the vendors to enable them to carry on their profession without harassment, so long as they obeyed government regulations. Slum dwellers also are becoming aware of their rights and are beginning to organize to demand them. And they have sometimes even approached the courts. Even a basic political right like the right to vote may be difficult for them to exercise, because to be included in the list of the voters, a fixed address is required, and squatters and pavement dwellers may find it difficult to provide this. Now here, citizenship, equality, and rights. The Supreme Court gave an important precedent regarding the rights of slum dwellers in the Bombay in response to a public interest litigation PIL filed by a social activist Olga Tellis against Bombay Municipal Corporation in 1985. The petition claimed the right to live on the pavements or in the slums because there was no alternative accommodation available close to their place of work. If they were forced to move, they would lose their livelihood as well. And the Supreme Court said Article 21 of the Constitution, which guaranteed the right to life, included the right to livelihood. Therefore, if pavement dwellers were to be evicted, they should first be provided alternative accommodation under the right to shelter. Here, among the other groups of the people who are becoming marginalized in our society are the tribal people and forest dwellers, and these peoples are dependent on access of the forests and other natural resources to maintain their way of life. Many of them face threats to their way of life and livelihood because of the pressure of increasing populations and the search for the land and resources to maintain them. Pressures from the commercial interests wanting to mine the resources which may exist in the forests or coasts poses another threat to the way of life and livelihood of the forest dwellers and tribal peoples, as does the tourist industry. Governments are struggling with the problem of how to protect these people and their habitat without at the same time endangering development of the country. This is an issue that affects all the citizens, not just tribal people. To try and ensure equal rights and opportunities for all the citizens cannot be a simple matter for any government, and different groups of people may have different needs and problems, and the rights of one group may conflict with the rights of another. Equal rights for the citizens need not mean that uniform policies have to be applied to all the people, since different groups of the people may have different needs, and if the purpose is not just to make the policies which would apply in the same way to all the people, but to make people more equal, the different needs and claims of the people would have to be taken into account when framing the policies. And what should become clear from the discussion is that in the world situation, the economy and the society demand new interpretations of the meaning and rights of the citizenship. The formal laws regarding the citizenship only form the starting point, and the interpretations of the laws is constantly evolving. While answers to some of the problems which may arise may not be easy to find, the concept of equal citizenship would mean that providing equal rights and protection to all the citizens should be one of the guiding principles of the government policies. Survey 3 families of workers working close to or in your homes or schools and find out the details about their life. Where is their ancestral place? When and why did they come here, and where do they live? and how many people share the accommodation, what kinds of facilities are available to them, and do their children attend the school. And next is here, according to the official figures published about the land distribution in the Zimbabwe, some 4,400 white families owned 32% of the agricultural land, that is about 10 meter hectares. About 1 million black peasant families own just 16 meter hectares, that is the 38% of the land, while the land that is with the white families is fertile and irrigated. The land in the hands of black population is less fertile and unirrigated. While tracing the history of the land ownership, it is very obvious that a century ago the whites had taken the fertile land from the native people. Whites have now been in Zimbabwe for the generations and consider themselves as Zimbabweans, and the total population of the white in the Zimbabwe is just 0.06% of the population. In the year 1997, the president of Zimbabwe, Mugabe, announced the plans to take over around 1500 farms. What ideas from the citizenship would you use to support or oppose the claims of black and white citizens of the Zimbabwe? उसके बाद जो next वो क्या है, citizen and nation. The concept of nation state evolved in the modern period. One of the earliest assertions regarding the sovereignty of the nation state and democratic rights of the citizens was made by the revolutionaries in France in 1789. And nation states claim that their boundaries define not just a territory but also a unique culture and shared history. The national identity may be expressed through the symbols like a flag, national anthem, national language, or certain ceremonial practices, among the other things. Most modern states include people of different religions, languages, and cultural traditions, but the national identity of the democratic state is supposed to provide citizens with a political identity that can be shared by all the members of the state. Democratic states usually try to define their identity so that it is as inclusive as possible, that is, which allows all the citizens to identify themselves as part of the nation. But in practice, most countries tend to define their identity in a way which makes it easier for some citizens to identify with the state than the others. It may also make it easier for the state to extend citizenship to some people and not others. This would be as true of the United States, which prides itself on being a country of immigrants as any other country. Now, France, for instance, is a country which claims to be both secular and inclusive. It includes not only people of the European origin but also citizens who originally came from other areas such as North Africa. Culture and language are important features of its national identity, and all the citizens are expected to assimilate into it in the public aspects of their lives, and they may, however, retain their personal beliefs and practices in their private lives. And this may seem like a reasonable policy, but it is not always simple to define what is public and what is private, and this has given rise to some controversies. Religious beliefs is supposed to belong to the private sphere of the citizens, but sometimes religious symbols and practices may enter into their public lives. You may have heard about the demand of the Sikh school boys in the France to wear the turban to the schools, and of the Muslim girls to wear the head scarf with their school uniforms, and this was disallowed by some schools on the ground that it involved bringing religious symbols into the public sphere of the state education, and those whose religions did not demand such practices naturally did not face the same problem. Clearly, assimilation into the national culture would be easier for some groups than for the others, and the criteria for the granting citizenship to the new applicants varies from country to country. In countries such as Israel or Germany, factors like religion or ethnic origin may be given priority when granting citizenship. In Germany, there has been a persistent demand from the Turkish workers who were at one time encouraged to come and work in the Germany, and that their children who have been born and brought up in Germany should automatically be granted citizenship. And this is still being debated, and these are only a few examples of the kinds of restrictions which may be placed on the citizenship even in the democratic countries which pride themselves on being inclusive. India defines itself as a secular democratic nation state, and the movement for the independence was a broad-based one, and deliberate attempts were made to bind together people of different religions, regions, and cultures, and true partition of the country did take place in 1947 when differences with the Muslim League could not be resolved, but this only strengthened the resolve of Indian national leaders to maintain the secular and inclusive characters of the Indian nation state they are committed to build, and this resolve was embodied in the Constitution. And the Indian Constitution attempted to accommodate a very diverse society. To maintain just a few of the diversities, it attempted to provide full and equal citizenship to groups as different as the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Many women who had not previously enjoyed equal rights, some remote communities in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands who had little contact with modern civilization, and many others. It also attempted to find a place for the different languages, religions, and practices found in the different parts of the country. It had to provide equal rights to all without at the same time forcing people to give up their personal beliefs, languages, or cultural practices. It was therefore a unique experiment which was undertaken through the Constitution, and the Republic Day parade in the Delhi symbolizes the attempt of the state to include the people of different regions, cultures, and religions. And the provisions about the citizenship in the Constitution can be found in Part 2 and in subsequent laws passed by the Parliament. And the Constitution adopted an essentially democratic and inclusive notion of the citizenship. In India, citizenship can be acquired by both by birth, descent, registration, naturalization, or inclusion of territory, and the rights and obligations of the citizens are listed in the Constitution. And there is also a provision that the state should not discriminate against the citizens on the grounds only for the religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. The rights of the religions and linguistic minorities are also protected. Here, let's debate. It is not appropriate for the schools or any other public agencies like the army to insist on the common uniform and to ban the display of the religious symbols such as the turban. And then उसके बाद जो next है वो क्या है? However, even such inclusive provisions have given rise to struggle and controversies. The women movement, the Dalit movement or struggle of the peoples displaced by the development projects represent only a few of the struggles being faced by the people who feel that they are being denied full rights of the citizenship. And the experience of India indicates that democratic citizenship in any country is a project on ideal to work towards. The new issues are constantly being raised as society has changed and new demands are made by the groups who feel they are being marginalized in a democratic state. These demands have to be negotiated. And then उसके बाद जो next है वो है universal citizenship. When we think of refugees or illegal migrants, many images may come to mind. One may be of people from the Asia or Africa who had paid agents to the smuggle them into the Europe or America, and the risks are high, but they seem willing to make the effort. Another image may be of people displaced by war or famine. Such images are often shown on the television. Refugees in the Darfur region of the Sudan, and Palestinians, Burmese, or Bangladeshis. The examples are many. All these are people who have been forced to become refugees and in their own or neighboring countries. Here, we often assume that full membership of a state should be available to all those who ordinarily live and work in the country, as well as to those who apply for the citizenship. But although many states may support the idea of universal and inclusive citizenship, each of them also fixes criteria for the grant of citizenship, and these would generally be written into the constitution and laws of the country. States use their power to keep unwanted visitors out. However, in the spite of restrictions, we often assume that full membership of a state should be available to all those who ordinarily live and work in the country, as well as to those who apply for the citizenship. But although many states may support the idea of universal and inclusive citizenship, each of them also fixes criteria for the grant of citizenship. These would generally be written into the constitution and laws of the country. States uses their power to keep unwanted visitors out. However, in the spite of restrictions, even the building of the walls or fences, considerable migration so the people still take place in the world. People may be displaced by the wars or persecution, famine, or other reasons. If no state is willing to accept them and they cannot return home, they become stateless people or refugees, and they may be forced to live in the camps or as illegal migrants. Often they cannot legally work or educate their children or acquire property, and the problems is also so great that the UN has appointed a high commissioner for refugees to try to help them. Decisions regarding how many people can be absorbed as citizens in a country poses a difficult humanitarian and political problem for many states. Many countries have a policy of accepting those fleeing from the persecution or war, but they may not want to accept the unmanageable number of the people who are exposed to the country to security risks. India pride itself on the providing refugee to persecuted peoples, as it did not with the Dalai Lama and his followers in 1959. Entry of people from the neighboring countries has taken place along all the borders of the Indian states, and the process continues. Many of these people remain as stateless peoples for the many years or generations, living in the camps or as illegal migrants. Only a relatively few of them are eventually granted citizenship. Such problems pose a challenge to the promise of the democratic citizenship, which is that the rights and identity of the citizens should be available to all the people in the contemporary world. Although many people cannot achieve citizenship of a state their choice, no alternative identity exists for them, and the problem of stateless people is an important one confronting the world today, and the borders of the states are still being redefined by war or political disputes, and for the people caught up in the such disputes, the consequences may be severe, and they may lose their homes and political identities and security and be forced to migrate. And can citizenship provide a solution to the problems of such people? If not, what kind of alternative identity can be provided today? Do we need to try and evolve a more genuinely universal identity than the national citizenship? Suggestions for a notion of a global citizenship are sometimes put forward, and the possibilities will be discussed in the next section. List some of the stateless people living in India today. Write a short note on any of them. Here, global citizenship. Consider the following statements. So there was an outpouring of the sympathy and help for the victims of the tsunami, which affected a number of countries in the South Asia in 2004. International networks like terrorists today, the United Nations is working with different states to try and prevent the spread of the bird flu and the possible emergency of a human viral pandemic. What is the common to the statements given above? What do they tell us about the world in which we live today? We live today in an interconnected world. New means of the communication, such as internet and television and cell phones, have brought a major change in the way in which we understand our world. In the past, it might have taken months for the news about developments in one part of the world to become known in other parts. But new modes of communication have put us into the immediate contact with the developments in different parts of the globe. We can watch disasters and wars on our television screens as they are taking place, and this has helped to develop sympathies and shared concerns among the people in different countries of the world. Supporters of global citizenship argue that although a world community and global society does not yet exist, people already feel linked to each other across the national boundaries, and they would say that the outpouring of help from all parts of the world for the victims of the Asian tsunami and the other major calamities is a sign of the emergence of a global society, and they feel that we should try to strengthen this feeling and work towards the concept of the global citizenship. The concept of national citizenship assumes that our state can provide us with the protection and rights which we need to live with dignity in the world today. But states today are faced with the many problems which they cannot tackle by themselves. In this situation, are individual rights guaranteed by the state sufficient to protect the freedom of the people today, or has the time come to move to a concept of human rights and global citizenship? One of the attractions of the notion of the global citizenship is that it might make it easier to deal with the problems which extend across national boundaries and which therefore need cooperative actions by the people and governments of the many states. For instance, it might make it easier to find an acceptable solution to the issue of the migrants and stateless peoples, or at least to ensure them basic rights and protection regardless of the country in which they may be living. In the previous section, we saw that the equal citizenship within a country can be threatened by the socio-economic inequalities or other problems which might exist. Such problems can ultimately only be solved by the governments and people of that particular society. Therefore, full and equal membership of a state remains important for the people today. But the concept of global citizenship reminds is that national citizenship might need to be supplemented by an awareness that we live in an interconnected world, and that there is also need for us to strengthen our links with the people in different parts of the world and be ready to work with the people and governments across the national boundaries. Here, find out about the global citizenship education, GCED, from this website. Here, this chapter is over. In the next video, we will be discussing about the nationalism.